Good evening, and you're very welcome to another episode of The Rugby Show here on finalwhistle.ie. It's episode 5 of our second season, and once again, I'm Breifne, and I'm joined by our intrepid reporter from across the leagues, Ciaron Noble. Ciaron, another week older, another week wiser. How are you going?
I don't know about wiser, but yeah, definitely another week older. What else would I be doing on my Wednesday night?
Absolutely. Well, you and the rest of the rugby community, hopefully in the country, will be tuned in to us for the next 45 minutes to half an hour, 50 minutes or so, while we chat all things AIL. We're going to hear from Greystones Captain Eoin Marmion about his season so far. Fantastic start for the Wicklow side. 4 wins from 4. We'll hear all about it from him very, very shortly. We'll also be chatting to Ciaron about all the action across all 6 divisions, from 1A to 2C, and the women's division, of course, thrown in as well. But Ciaron, I suppose we'll start with your weekend. Where were you over the weekend? What games caught your fancy?
I was lucky enough to be doing the commentary in Trinity for their game against Ballynahinch, so I hope I wasn't giving anybody an earache, but I got some pretty nice comments, which is always good to see. So yeah, I was at that game and it was very good. Ballynahinch were 13-0 up at one stage, but Trinity were very good in the second half, and I think it finished 35-16 to Trinity, so they're still unbeaten. So that's where I was on Saturday, and I'll be in the Aviva this Saturday for Ireland versus South Africa.
Nice place to be if you can get the tickets. In terms of my Saturday, I spent it, of course, right here, putting in all the results live as they happen on the site. You can catch all those live updates across the AIL on our website, finalwhistle.ie, and just click on the rugby live games. We get it all there. But for me, my focus was on Trinity as well, because I have to say kudos to their Twitter. It's one of the funniest things going on a Saturday afternoon.
Borderline dangerous.
It's entertaining, I'll give it that. But listen, let's turn our attention to Division 2B, and we'll start with the leaders. Greystones, of course, another big win at the weekend. They're 4th in 4 games. They sit comfortably top of the table, 3 points clear of Dungannon, who are obviously in second place on that table. We might catch up with their captain, their lock, Eoin Marmion, and he joins us now. Eoin, you're very, very welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me, lads. Yeah, it's great to get on the show.
Well, you're very welcome. We're delighted to have you. And I suppose ahead of a clash with my local side down here, Sligo, at the weekend, we had to invite you on to try and get some background knowledge and a little bit of some of the insights you're going to give us over the next 10 or 15 minutes or so, obviously. But in terms...
Sorry, I know I was saying I can't be giving away any secrets now tonight, but...
We'll see. We'll see. We've got a few minutes. In terms of, I suppose, the season so far, you've got to be happy with 4 wins from 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't not be happy with 4 from 4, but of course you can't get complacent. Like we've been 9 from 9 at Christmas, and we haven't won the league, so we learned that kind of thing the hard way. Complacency will kill you, so we got to just keep the heads down and keep ploughing on each week. Yeah. So yeah, on to Sligo this week, which is always a tough place to go. It's a long journey. The weather's never great, but I was saying just there earlier that I've only ever played there when it was sunny. I played once last year, and the sun was splitting the stones down there, which was a shock to everyone on the bus down. But yeah, no, I'll probably get the worst of the weather this weekend. But yeah, what can you do?
What do you think has went well for you guys though this season in the first 4 games?
I think, well, we had a long preseason, so we had a long preseason, so everyone was kind of with each other and around each other from July. So we kind of come together as a group a lot. We have a new head coach, Dan Kenny, and Stewart as well, and they kind of wanted to bring in their plays and their different kind of set piece early on. So we've spent a bit of time together getting those right, and it didn't come together for a while, to be honest, but it's starting to come together now, and it's come at the right time, come the start of AIL. So yeah, I'd say it's just the coaches and having time together to get a long preseason in.
You mentioned 9 from 9 at the start of last year, and the way that the whole COVID-affected league over the last couple of seasons. Had it been a normal year, of course, you'd have been promoted as top of the table. There was no automatic promotion last year. Does that rancor a little bit? Is that something you kind of a little bit disappointed with how that all panned out?
Yeah, it's one of those things, like you can't do anything about it. It's out of your control, so there's no point moaning and groaning about it. But it definitely was a bit of they let us know the night before our last match before Christmas was when they sent out an email. So it was going into that. I think it was 8 from 8 going into that. And we ended up, I think the heads kind of dropped a little bit hearing that, being like, oh, kind of what's the point? Those thoughts go through your head as much as you don't want them to. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. So you just got to deal with it. And we knew it halfway through that we just had to keep pushing on for the rest of the season. So which I think we did as well. And we had a good second half to the season. It was just that last game against Blackrock in the very, very final play that killed us. But we have to just move on from that.
And how do you bounce back from something like that? Like last play of the game, losing out in promotion. Like how do you G the lads up and kind of get them ready to go again this time around?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough to... You have the whole kind of summer to think about it and think of what could have gone right, what should have gone right. But then you kind of you get over it over the summer, and you come together as a group again. Towards the end of the summer, the start of preseason, and you kind of just talk about what you want to do and what you expect from the season, and kind of just talk it out and put all the cards on the table from everyone, and then everyone just has to buy into it. That's more or less it, really.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about the impact that you mentioned briefly there yourself about Dan, what he's brought in. What has he brought in that's been different from last year? Because you were probably the most dominant side in that division last year. It's a tough task to follow that, but you seem to have matched last season's intensity with this. How much has that been down to maybe a fresh voice in the dressing room?
Yeah, there's that, and he also plays with us, so it makes my job as captain a lot easier when your coach is there beside you in the pack playing. So but he brings, not only is he a great player and he leads by example on the pitch, but he's very smart in terms of he does his homework. He knows like where the space is and what moves to run at what times. He's a bit of a wizard in the lineouts. He knows exactly what's going on, which I've learned a lot from. And yeah, he does his homework. He knows. Don't want to give too much away, but even against Belfast last week, he showed us clips of like 3 or 4 of their different lineouts that they had done so far in the season, and that was their first 4 lineouts that they did in the game. And Jack, our second row, took every single one of them. So that kind of stuff comes down to Dan, the coaches, big time, just them doing their homework, and then also relaying it to the lads as well, like, because a lot of the time you can be overloaded with information, and then when you get on the pitch, you're full of adrenaline, and sometimes things can just go out the window. So yeah, they just have to. They've been doing well, getting the information to us and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
that would be my next question, I suppose. Was it hard adapting to a new coaching setup? Because Kevin Lewis was there for a long time, and then Warren O'Kelly as well. Like, is it hard to, when a new coach comes in, to get used to the way he likes doing things, or have you all just settled in really well?
Yeah, you see, it was kind of a smooth transition with Dan because he played with us and kind of was a bit of an assistant coach, pack leader last year. So it was a smooth transition that he was there, and it wasn't just a new lad coming in out of nowhere kind of thing. But yeah, they're very different styles in coaching anyway. Like Kev Lewis is old school, and same with Warren. They'd be old school out in the rain, beating the crap out of each other on a Tuesday night, whereas Dan is kind of more, how to say it, more, I don't know, he's less about beating each other up and more about kind of, they have a bit of kind of player management and not going too hard on a Tuesday if you've had a tough match on the weekend, that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're different styles, and Stuart's great as well. Stuart does all the scrummaging and a lot of the lineouts and video analysis and stuff. So yeah, no, it's good. It's very different. We're done at 9 o'clock on the dot every Tuesday and Thursday, whereas Kevin's can drag on sometimes, depending if we're getting it right or not. You know.
In terms of your own personal involvement, of course. Been involved with Greystones, your whole family's involved with Greystones, a couple of brothers on the team as well. But you took a little bit of a break that kind of COVID interrupted. You went to Vancouver for a little while. COVID kind of spoiled that a little bit. have you got that wanderlust, that little bit of travel bug out of your system, or is that something that might happen down the future, or will you be in that Greystone shirt for a couple of years more?
Yeah, I think so. Until, like, my plan is to stick it out here. Once you come back, you get a job and you settle in and you get a place to live and all that kind of stuff. So I think the stage I'm at now, I've probably got it out of my system. I mean, never say never, but kind of settling down here now and I'm enjoying it. And I think the time away from the rugby, I didn't play at all when I was over there. And I think that gave like kind of relit the fire to start getting back into it. And it was one of the things I missed the most when I was over there. Because you'd still be in the WhatsApp groups, you'd see it all going on, you'd get sent the video and you'd watch it back and all that, even when you're over there, and you'd see what's going on. And there's a bit of, you feel like you're missing out or whatever. But I know it's definitely came back ready to go and very eager to get back into it, to be honest. Yeah, I played a bit of Aussie rules over in Vancouver actually, which was pretty random.
But your two brothers, Cillian and Shane, are both on the team as well. You were just telling me that Shane's suffered a bad injury, which isn't nice to hear. Like, he's a fantastic player as well. But what's it like playing with your brothers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's obviously it's great for my family and for my parents and my grandparents who come down to watch the games. They absolutely love it, and we have a big family involvement in the club. But yeah, no, it is brilliant to you have that extra kind of bond with your brother than you would with anybody else, you know. And when things get tough, kind of stuff, you can look to each other. And luckily, Kill was captain previously before me. He'd always kind of step up in the big moments when the team would need him, and I always respected that and looked up to him about that kind of stuff. So. Yeah, no, it's great. And yeah, unfortunate about Shane, but there's plenty of time once he just focuses on the rehab and comes back stronger. He does have the talent and the skill to get into the team. So the day will hopefully come down the line again.
Talking about the rest of the season, I suppose Cillian won't play any part in that. But I'm talking Cillian, sorry, Shane won't play any part in the rest of the season. But hopefully yourself and Cillian will be part of that squad to the end of the year. You set a decent target of unbeaten games last year. Can you go better this year? Is there a chance that we could be seeing double figures? Could we see 15, 16? Is 18 beyond the realms of possibility?
Well, nothing's beyond the realms of possibility at all now, but you know, I'm not going to jinx anything. We're just going to take it game by game and week by week. And the last thing you want to be doing is thinking about the end of the season when you're midway through and you've only won 4 games. So yeah, we just got to not get ahead of ourselves and just keep focusing on do our homework on the team that we're playing next week. And every game is the biggest game of the year. That's how we see it.
And I was going to ask you, who's the best player you've played with actually in Greystones?
That's a tough one.
He has to say the brothers, right? Because
yeah, it's a trick question.
Kill definitely, to be honest, Kill would be up there. I'm not going to lie. But I'd say probably maybe Andrew Keeley was probably one of the people I looked up to the most because he was captain and the best player when I came through. From 20s, and just his kind of his smarts. He's not going to be running through people, but he's got good rugby smarts and he knows the game so well and always kind of makes the right decision at the right time, which is a very tough thing to do, you know.
Absolutely. Well, go, Ciaran, you go.
No, you go.
No, I was just going to say thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. Of course, it's Sligo for you on Saturday for yourself and your Greystones teammates. I'm not going to wish you the very best of luck, but I wish you a little bit of luck at the game, and hopefully you continue to put that pressure on the other teams around you at the top of the table. And,
I'm from Wicklow now, Breifne. I want the Greystones boys to get the win, so
we'll fight about it off air afterwards. It'll be fine.
Thanks, really, lads. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Really enjoyed having you on. Eoin Marmion there from Greystones Captain, of course. So he's really ignited the flame. It's myself and Ciaran are going to be living vicariously through Sligo and Greystones at the weekend. But it's going to be a top-notch clash. It always is between those two sides. So, but then there are so many more. Let's maybe stick with Division 2B while we're here. If we take a little look at the fixtures and the results from that particular grade over the weekend. Then we'll go back up to Division 1A. But the results at the bottom of the table there: Enniscorthy 12, Dungannon 13, Galwegians 29, Sligo 29, Greystones 14, Belfast Harlequins 0. I don't think those scores are correct. Rainy Old Boys 19, Malahide 0, and Wanderers 25, Galway Corinthians 31. So
I do think it was 14-0. I do think the Greystones game was 14-0.
You're right. They're actually both right. Sorry, I didn't know. In my head, I was thinking of something different. No, they were the actual scores. And it's an interesting time. Greystones top of the table, as we mentioned, 18 points from those 4 games. Only team with a 100% record at this level. But it's reasonably tight then between the next bunch. Galwegians got their first points of the week last week against Sligo. They picked up 2 points for that draw. Enniscorthy 2 points at the bottom of the table. But from Malahide then to Dungannon, 2nd to 8th, there's only 8 points between them. 2 weeks could see anybody move anywhere in this table.
Yeah, this is a really important block of fixtures across all the divisions, really. It's going to tell a lot. You can't really tell a lot from the first block. So the second block is majorly important for everybody. For Greystones, they'll just want to keep on winning, to keep doing what they're doing. But for other teams, they'll want to climb up the table and get in better positions. It's a super competitive league. You've got Galwegians, you've got Sligo, you've got Belfast Harlequins, you've got Wanderers, who I think are a very good team. The results just haven't really went their way yet. But even Enniscorthy, I think, they're just getting used to the league, but I think, they'll have a good period as well. It's a very exciting league to watch, and I reckon Greystones will be thereabouts near the top, but there's going to be lots of competition for the likes of 3rd place, 4th place. Maybe you'll get a Malahide, like a bit of an underdog in that spot, or maybe even a Sligo, and you'll be happy, Breifne. But who knows? It's super competitive. It's a bit like 1B in that sense.
Absolutely. Well, listen, before we leave 2B, maybe let's take a quick look at the league table in 2B. As we mentioned, Greystones at the top, Enniscorthy, their neighbours, almost down there at the bottom of the table. But it's fairly tight between all the sides there. Dungannon right down to Malahide. As we said, only 8 points between them. We've talked about how competitive 1B and 2B are compared to maybe the other divisions, and we're seeing it again this year in terms of the results that have gone so far. Who's surprised you in this division, Ciaran? Anyone stand out yet?
I'm not like Corinthians were good last year. I actually meant Corinthians earlier. I said Galwegians, but I actually meant Corinthians. But Corinthians were good last year, and they seem to have they're good again this year. Belfast Harlequins came good at the end of last season, and they're doing all right. Like, they lost to Greystones at the weekend, but I think they're a really good team. Neil Doak is the coach there, former Ulster player. So I'm not really surprised by anything yet, but we're only like 4 games in. Maybe the one thing that I'm a little bit surprised, I thought Wanderers, from seeing what they did in the preseason, I thought they'd be higher up than what they are now. I really thought they'd be doing really well, but I still think they can. There's plenty of time left.
Yeah, let's take a look back to the top of the divisions. In Division 1A, we have Terrier College top of the table, 20 points from 4 games. It doesn't get much better than that for a side, but they're very, very closely followed by Trinity and Clontarf, who, of course, meet this weekend. That has to be the weekend's best fixture of the weekend for everybody, Ciaran, to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you get down to that, if you go down to that game in Clontarf and then you go to the Ireland-South Africa game, it's massive. I think, to be honest, it's an acid test for Trinity. I think it's a much more important game for Trinity than it is for Clontarf, because I think if Trinity can beat Clontarf, they know they can beat the likes of Clontarf or Terrier. I was talking to their manager after the game, their head coach, Tony Smith, director of rugby, and he was saying that they are the 2 teams that they know they have to beat if they're really going to be title contenders. So Trinity know that that's a massively important game, but I think the game's going to be won in the front 5. I think it's going to be a real physical battle. It's going to be really tough and rough. I think Clontarf have a front 5 that could play against most national teams. I think they're really, really good, and I think it's going to be a massive test for Trinity. But Trinity have some really good guys in the front 5. They've got Max Dunn, Jack Dunn's younger brother. Jack Dunn played for Leinster. Paddy McCarthy, who I talk about every week, is excellent. Mark Nicholson as well. Then Thomas Clarkson will probably be available for them at the weekend. He was with Leinster last weekend, so he didn't play against Ballynahinch, but he'll probably be available this weekend. So I think it will be won in those close quarters, and up front. I think if Trinity can match them, they can definitely win the game. But I'd slightly edge Clontarf. It's actually funny. It's coming up to... So they'll be playing on the 5th of November, I think it is. And I think last year on the 5th of November on a Friday night was the last time Clontarf lost a league game. I think it was against Lansdowne in Castle Avenue. So it's coming up to 12 months since they lost a game. So who's going to stop them is the main question.
Yeah, of course, Trinity will be hoping it will be them come the weekend. Shannon have had a pretty miserable start to life back in Division 1A, but that's probably been more down to the fixture list and who they've been facing rather than maybe the performances themselves. They have a slightly easier one going on the league table looking at it. They have a local derby against Garryowen. It's never going to be easy for Shannon to pick up points in that, given the territorial nature of Limerick Rugby. But Shannon be hoping to maybe get their first league points on the board this weekend.
Yeah, it's a massive game for them. With Shannon, it's strange. I've looked at their past results, and in the first half, in the last 2 games, I think they've led. I think they were 9-3 up against Clontarf at the weekend, and then they were up against, I think it was Cork Con the week before the break, and they were up against them. So I think they have a problem. I think around the 60-minute mark, I think things start to go a bit bad for them. Maybe they're just struggling with the intensity of 1A a little bit. They're doing really well for 60 minutes. They have some really good players. But Garryowen is definitely a game they have to target for a win. Garryowen are a bit like them in the sense that they haven't won a game yet. So they're 2 teams that know they really need a win against a team like Shannon or a team like Garryowen. So for me, yeah, it's a massive kind of early relegation game, if you'd like to call it that. I don't like to call it that because it's so early in the season, but it's really important for both teams. Probably more so Shannon to get a win, but I think, yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to watch. And it's also a Friday night game, which adds a little bit of spice sometimes as well.
Yeah, Friday night as well sees Lansdowne and Terranure. 2 local rivals that would know each other fairly well as well at this level. Terranure have been super impressive. I think you were talking earlier about how they're averaging something like 45, 46 points a game. They have a comfortable 3-point plus points difference after just 4 games. They're just running through sides. UCD felt their wrath last weekend. It was painful to almost keep track of the score. Can they keep that run going?
Well, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I don't think there's anything that shows that they can be stopped at the minute, to be honest, because they're like a well-oiled machine. They're really good. They've got the forwards, they've got the backs. The key to beating Terranure is to slow down the ball. You have to be able to get in at the rucks and make sure they don't get that front foot ball. And I think Lansdowne really have to concentrate in and around the kind of maul area, or the ruck area, and they need to kind of slow that ball down. So the likes of Jack O'Sullivan and Clive Ross for Lansdowne will be really, really important. But it's funny because if Lansdowne win, it can really kind of change their season in a way. They've lost 3 of their opening 4 games, which is something that they'll be pretty upset about. But if they can win on Friday night, it could really change things. But I think you have to look at Terranure and you'd have to say they're the favourites. But in saying that, these 2 teams had a game the week before the AIL started. I think it was the Leinster Senior League final, and I think it was really close. Terranure did win it, but I think it was a really physical battle, and I think there was only a few points in it or something. So I think if Lansdowne kind of use that game as a guide, maybe they can get into it and maybe they can cause Terranure problems. But I'd have to say the only team that I think can stop Terranure is probably a Clontarf, and that's a game I'm already looking forward to. I don't know what week that's in, but I think if anybody's around when that game's on, you should go and have a look.
Absolutely. One of the teams who are also struggling this year, UCD, 0 wins out of their first 4 games. They host Cork Con. Not exactly the opponents you'd fancy when you need to get your season up and running.
Yeah, well, Con have actually done really well, to be fair to them, because we talk about Terranure destroying teams. Terranure hammered Con a couple of weeks back, destroyed them, and Con would have been pretty demoralised because nobody does that to Cork Con. They're a bit like Lansdowne in that way. There's kind of this aura around them and everyone kind of is a bit scared of them, especially in Munster. But they've bounced back really well. I think they've won their 2 games since that, and now they're 4th in the league, so they're in a pretty good position, and they're only 6 points off Terranure and 5 points off Clontarf and Trinity, so they're doing quite well. UCD's a funny one. Like, I don't know what it is about Terranure. Terranure beat them 65 last year, I think, and they beat them like pretty last season, and then they beat them by a pretty big score at the weekend. But I actually think, from what I've seen of UCD in the previous 3 games, there was a lot of positives. I say that every week, but I don't know what's really going on with them, like why it's not really clicking, because they have some really good players. Like, I know he didn't play at the weekend, but Chris Cosgrave, if anybody's seen it for Leinster on Friday, was brilliant, excellent. And he's been playing for UCD in the 3 weeks before that, and he has been doing really well for them. So it's funny, like, how it just hasn't really clicked. Sean O'Brien, not Sean O'Brien, the Tullow Tank, a different Sean O'Brien in the Leinster Academy, has also been playing really well for them at number 8. So it's a bit funny how they haven't really got the win on the board. I can kind of understand why the likes of Gary Owen and Shannon haven't, but with UCD, I would have expected them to have got one by now. And actually, Clontarf played them in week 1, and I think UCD probably have given Clontarf the best test so far. So it's strange that they haven't actually got that win yet. I do think it'll eventually come, and it'll be interesting to see if they can get it against Con at the weekend.
Absolutely. Time will tell. Final game of the division is Young Munster and Ballynahinch. Both sides 2 from 4, 2 wins, 2 defeats. Very similar. They're both kind of in that little middle ground, almost on their own, 4 points either side of their closest opponents. This is a game that both sides will look at, probably a 6-pointer. It could define where in that middle space of the division they're going to finish up by the end of the year. I know it's very early to be talking in that way, but was that fair to say?
No, yeah, I was writing my preview earlier, and the mid-table is like, it's a real mid-table clash, like, and if one of them loses, they're kind of a good bit behind the leading pack, and if one of them wins, they're still on the tails. I think it's probably more important for Ballynahinch, to be honest with you, because they won those first 2 games, and everyone was kind of hyping them up. Like, Luke said it one week, and you said it the other week, and I was like, oh, I don't know, we have to wait a couple of rounds to see how good they actually are. So I think, like, they were very, very good against Trinity for 30 minutes. Like, they really outplayed Trinity in a lot of ways. But then after that, they kind of fell off. I don't know if it was a fitness thing or Trinity just got better, or probably just Trinity getting better, to be honest with you. But I think it's a really important game for Ballynahinch, also because they have home advantage. So they really need to win this game, because I think they have Terranure in round 6 away. So that won't be easy. Like, so they have to really target this. For Young Munster, they're always in and around that kind of 5th, 6th spot. They'll be targeting this game as well. But Conor Hayes is playing really good for them on the wing. Fantastic player. Fionn Gibbons as well was in Ireland in the 20s. So Young Munster will be disappointed they didn't beat Lansdowne last week. So yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting game. Just in the sense that if one of them loses, they could potentially fall into a kind of the bottom half of the table. And if one of them wins, it kind of keeps them kind of in the talk for those playoff places so early on. But I think it's more of an important game to Ballynahinch rather than it is to Young Munster, if I'm honest.
Yeah, so basically consign them to guaranteed a draw at this point. That is Division 1A. Let's take a quick look at the league table again before we leave the division completely, just to remind you how it looks at the top. And of course, that game of the weekend is that clash between Trinity and Clontarf. Out in Castle Avenue on Saturday afternoon. Well worth keeping an eye on that one. 2 games, of course, on Friday. Shannon, Gary Owen, Lansdowne and Terranure, which will no doubt interest all those top sides in Division 1A. Turning our attentions to Division 1B, we had some results from the weekend. Old Wesley 6, Highfield 5, UCC 32, Banbridge 21, Old Belvo 13, Buccaneers 24, Malone 24, Naas 38, and City of Armagh 22. St. Mary's College 34. Anything stand out to you there? For me, it's still Buccaneers March. It just seems to be never ending.
It has to be Bucks, really, because you have to remember they came from 2A, and a lot of the times when teams come up from 2A, you don't really know what to expect from them. But Bucks, 3 wins out of 4, that's pretty much as good as it gets. Like, you could say 4 out of 4 would be brilliant, but 3 out of 4, like, if you had said that to them at the start of the season, I'm pretty sure they would have bit your hand off. So, like, Eddie O'Sullivan is obviously doing great things down there, and he's got belief in the side. And yeah, I think it's a really, really good win for them. But Old Belvedere, I don't know what it is. I was talking to somebody recently, and as soon as they go out of Ollie Campbell Park, they seem to freeze a little bit. They just can't get those away wins. they're really good at home, but they just can't get any sort of away form or travelling form. And that's something that's a bit of a worry, to be fair, like, because they've got some really good players. They've got Mick O'Kennedy, who was with Trinity last year. They've got Cale Thatcher and Jaden Pickett, the two New Zealanders who went to school together. And Jaden Pickett, he's a phenomenal player in the centre, really, really good. So they have the players. So they need to be able to fix that away form problem that they have. And if they can do that, they can definitely push for top 4. But on books, I think, yeah, it's dream stuff from them, and they won't want it to end, I don't think. So they'll be hoping for more of the same.
Yeah. Anything else catch your eye from the games last weekend?
St. Mary's had a good win. Sean Cronin seems to be making Templeville a bit of a fortress. They've had 2 really good wins at home. It'll be interesting to see what they can do. They're always super competitive. Highfield Wesley was a bit of a strange one, actually. I watched a bit of the highlights, and it was only 6-5, which is really, really low scoring. I seen Stuart McAvoy, the commentator, said it was rugby for the purist. Like, I wouldn't have liked being commentating on that one if it was low scoring. So, yeah, it was a bit of a strange one, because actually Old Wesley and Highfield kind of set the standard in 1B last season. They were 1 and 2, and they pretty much beat everyone. So, yeah, it was a strange result. But Wesley will be delighted that they got the win, because they really needed that. Highfield will be disappointed that they've lost their last 2 games, to be fair. And, like, yeah, I think 1B is really, I struggle to talk about it every week because it's super, super competitive. And it'll be really, it's really interesting every week. But I think at the minute with Bucks doing their thing, and then UCC, who we haven't even talked about yet, but UCC seem to be doing really, really well. I heard Eddie O'Sullivan say in an interview he did recently, he said, it's way better to be bottom or to be top of 1B than it is to be bottom of 1A, which is exactly what UCC are going through right now. Last year, they really struggled. They were getting beaten pretty bad most weeks in 1A, and now they're flying high in 1B. Michael Bradley, obviously, you know, he's been a pro coach and he's achieved lots as a coach. So, and he's bringing in good things in UCC, but they look really good at the minute. Like, to win all your games in 1B is some feat. Like, so, yeah, 1B is always interesting, and it's a tough one to call, like, because it really changes every week.
The 2 games for the weekend ahead, probably that deserve most attention, are probably in that mid-table pack again. And we're looking at Highfield against City of Armagh and Old Wesley and Belvo. And those 2 games probably for me are the 2 that would draw my eye in terms of maybe the competitive nature that we can expect to see from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, like I always say, the AIL needs to be seen by everyone. And Old Belvedere, I have to say, do the best stream of anyone in the, like, in terms of quality. In terms of quality, it's not just because I've commentated on a few of their games, but it's in terms of quality, like, it's top notch and it's free. Like, so you may as well, if you're at nothing, like, jump on YouTube and watch that game, because AIL is fantastic to watch. Like, and yeah, it's going to be a really good game. And when the stream's there, I think it's brilliant for everyone, because you can go in and you can watch the game.
Yeah, no, there have been a few clubs that will be covering games across the league that have had really, really, really high production quality on their streams as well. But camera work, commentary, it's a really good production. It's an enjoyable watch. So do check that out with your local clubs. And if you can't get to a game, or it's an away game, you just can't get to, maybe check that out as well. But before we leave 1B, maybe let's take a quick look at the league table. I just mentioned UCC running away with it at the moment. Very, very early days in that division just yet, with Buccaneers and St. Mary's College looking to get back on their coattails this weekend. Those 4 that we talked about all face each other. 1 point separates those 4 sides. Highfield, they play City of Armagh, while Old Wesley and Old Belvedere will clash also this weekend. And then at the bottom, Naas, Malone, Banbridge. Interestingly enough, though, Ciaran, nobody still with a duck egg in the win column. Everyone's off the mark. Everyone's up and running. We can expect to see this just get tighter and tighter as the season progresses.
No, there'll only be a few points between, I'd say, 3rd and 7th come the end of the season. And Naas were actually the last team. They won at the weekend against Malone, so they were the last team to kind of get the win. They're actually very good as well. Sean O'Brien, actually, I seen last week that he tore his hamstring off the bone, so I don't think we're not going to be seeing him probably for the rest of the season. But Naas are a very good team. Oscar Cawley, the scrum half, is probably in the form of his life at the minute. I think he scored I think it's I think he scored 4 tries in 3 games or something like that anyway. But he's playing really well. And then they've got some exciting backline players like the likes of Andrew Osborne, Donald Conroy. So Naas can play with, like, they can play with anyone as well. It's a super competitive division. I know I say it every week and I'm like a broken record, but actually you don't know what's going to happen. Like, so that's why what UCC are doing at the minute, beating everyone, is like super impressive. It's almost as impressive as Terran Ure racking up big scorelines every week, because 1B I'd say is more competitive than 1A is.
Yeah. Okay, Division 1 done. Let's look at the women's stuff before we go on to Division 2A and 2C later in the programme. Some big results last weekend. Railway Union had a great win against Galwegians, puts them top of the table, I suppose, by virtue of the fact that Old Belvo lost to Blackrock. The top 3 sides, again, were really tight at the top of this table. 1 point separating the 3 of them. Who do you think is going to come away at the end of the season with the silverware? Because we split again in basically 2 or 3 games' time. What can you tell us about what's going to happen with that, Ciaran?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's the top 4 going to a competition, and then it would have been the bottom 6, but Malone obviously pulled out at the start of the season, so it'll be the bottom 5, and then it kind of is like the conference competition, and then it's the top proper like cup competition, as if you want to call it that. So the one Railway have won for the last couple of years. So it's interesting because Galwegians and Wicklow play this weekend, and it's actually 4th versus 5th. So whoever wins that is in a pretty comfortable kind of position to make the top 4. So that'll be a really interesting game. But probably the game of the week is, I think Railway are playing Old Belvedere, if I'm correct, this weekend. And that's a massive game. Old Belvedere obviously coming off the loss against Blackrock College. They'll want to fix that, and Railway won't want to lose their 100% winning record. And then next week, Railway play Blackrock. So it's all kind of coming to a head at the top of the table. Those 3 teams are going to be the 3 teams that kind of contest the main kind of trophy come the end of the season. And it's interesting because I was saying to you before, like that 4th place is a bit of a poison chalice, like, because you feel like you're doing really well and you're like, we're in the top competition. But if you get into the 4th, you could be well beaten by the top 3. So it's a bit of a weird one. Do you really want to make the top 4? Of course, as sports people, you want to be the best you can be. So you do want to make the top 4. But in a case of a Wicklow or a Galwegians, if you finish outside that, do you have a better chance of winning silverware?
Well, we heard Ella Roberts earlier in the season talk about how she didn't care. She wanted to improve herself. She wanted her team to improve themselves. And the only way they felt that was going to happen for them was by playing the likes of Blackrock, the likes of Old Belvo, the likes of Railway Union week in, week out. And she had set it as one of her goals that Wicklow would take that. They've given themselves a really good chance. A victory against Galwegians at the weekend would set them up completely, because I think they'd be pretty much clear of UL Bows back in 6th place. Galway with that game extra played, we only have 1 fixture left, and it would be advantage Wicklow in that sense.
Yeah, I think Wicklow have 2 games left. I think they're going to Ollie Campbell Park next week against Old Belvedere, so that won't be easy. But maybe that's the test they need. If Old Belvedere are in 3rd place and Wicklow are in 4th place, maybe that'll tell us a lot that we need to know, you know. It's a funny one because Ella's like the ultimate competitor, so she'll obviously want to be playing against the best and, you know, making it into the Leinster squads and everything come after Christmas. Like, you need to be up against the best to kind of put your best foot forward. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Do you want to win? Do you want to win trophies, or do you want to learn at the top? It's a tough question, I think.
Yeah, I think just looking at the fixtures, Wicklow after the Galwegians game at the weekend face Old Belvo and Railway Union in their last 2 games, whereas the last game for Galwegians in their only game after the weekend is a trip to UL Bows. So you would fancy, based on form and I suppose just tradition, that Galwegians would probably be the favourites to get that 4th spot. But stranger things have happened.
Yeah, well, it's really on this Saturday. Like, it's really all on that game this Saturday. And whoever wins gets that place in the top 4. And it's a bit of a fairy tale story, to be fair, for either team, because UL Bows have kind of taken that spot in recent times, but they haven't really hit the mark this year. So it's a massive chance for a Wicklow or a Galwegians to kind of to kind of show how far they've come, especially Wicklow, considering this is only their second full season in the AIL. So it would be a great story to tell. But it's super good, and they have to split the league though. They have to do it, like, with the way it is and the way certain teams are miles ahead of the rest. It just makes it more competitive in the long run. I think it's unfortunate that they have to do that, but you want teams to be going into games thinking that they have an opportunity of winning it. So I do think it is important to do the split as well.
Let's take a look at that league table, which will be split in just a couple of rounds' times. Railway, Belvo and Blackrock sitting nice and pretty on the top of the table. So tight between those three sides. Look at the absolutely savage point difference that Railway Union have. 307 points plus after 5 games. Only 19 points conceded. That's colossal. At the other end of the table, Cook and Ballincollig have struggled so far this year. Suttonians and UL Bows just slightly better, while those two we talked about, Galwegians and Wicklow, will be vying for effectively that 4th place this weekend. There will be mathematical options that would see Galwegians still qualify 4th should they beat Wicklow and results go to form elsewhere. But realistically, it's all on the line this weekend. So we'll see what happens at the weekend. If you were putting your money on it, Ciaran, what side would you be landing?
Well, Wicklow's my local club, so I don't think I can say Galwegians. I don't think it's in me to say Galwegians, to be honest. But
you've never been back in the club gates.
Yeah, no, I have to say, I genuinely think though Wicklow can actually win it. It's not me just saying it. I think they're on a real upward trajectory at the minute, and I think they can win the game. It's at home as well, so they always get a huge crowd on Saturdays. So yeah, I think Wicklow can get the job done, to be fair.
Okay, let's turn attention to Division 2A. We've already had a quick look at 2B earlier in the programme when we were chatting with the Greystones Captain Eoin Marmion. But 2A, results down there on the table underneath the conversation here. Blackrock College 30, Queens 29. The other results I did miss as they went through, but they were quite simply Nevis 14, Ballymena 16, Barnhall 22, Cashel 21, Dolphin 27, Bohemians, ULOs 24, Navan 15, Old Crescent 9, and Blackrock College and Queen's University 29 Queens. It's like we've talked about other divisions being tight. Maybe the league table isn't quite as tight in this particular division at the moment, but there's 5 games, 2 points between the sides, 1 point between the sides, 3 points, 6 and 1. All games losing bonus points. Some big scores as well. It wasn't like it was 5-8. These games were decent games, nearly all with at least one side getting a bonus point out of a game. It's competitive. The league is super competitive, Ciaran.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the AIL so good, because I always have this thing about the URC that maybe it's not the most competitive competition in the world. Like most weeks you'll see Leinster run away with it, and they might have like a seconds team out. So I think the AIL is that competitive rugby that we need in this country. But yeah, you have to start with that Queen's result. It's really surprising, to be fair. Like Blackrock College only came up from 2B, beat Greystones in that final with the last play last season, and they beat Queen's. I think they're the first team to beat Queen's this season in the regular league season. So massive win for them. Like it's a statement of intent, And I did kind of say to Luke at the start of the season that I wouldn't be surprised if Blackrock College were up near the kind of top of 2A come the end of the year. And that's it's a massive win. And Queens would have been a little bit surprised by that maybe, because they were kind of a bit like Terranure and a bit like UCC. They were kind of doing really well and nobody was really getting anywhere near them. So yeah, massive result for Blackrock College.
Anything else catch your eye in terms of the games? Obviously, UL Old Crescent struggling at the moment. UL beaten by 3 points by Dolphin. Crescent by 6 against Navan. Dolphin particularly, UL will be disappointed to have lost that one.
Yeah, UL just haven't really kicked into gear yet this season. But I mean, it's only 3 points. I know it's hard to take a loss at any time, but they have to look at it as they got the 1 point, which is better than nothing, and they are getting closer to a win. So they kind of have to build on these performances every week and on these results. MU Barnhall got the win as well, which is pretty big for them. They're obviously a good student team. They got lots of people from Maynooth University. I think they'd probably be a team I tip as dark horses for this division. If they can get things right, they can really push towards those playoff positions. So that was a good win for them. And yeah, 2A seems to be quite competitive. It wouldn't be one of the leagues that I'm most familiar with, but I always keep an eye and know what's going on.
Yeah, so quick look at the league table. In Division 2A, Queens lead the way, 16 points from their opening 4 games. That defeat at the weekend at the hands of Blackrock, who have closed the gap at the top of the table to just that 1 point. And as you can see, fairly tight there amongst the next few teams: Navan, Ballymena, Cashel, Barnhall, only a point or level pegging between those particular sides. Nina and Dolphin on 9, while UL, Bowes and Old Crescent finish off the table at the foot, 3 points and 2 points respectively. We move on to Division 2C. Plenty of games played in that division as well. Number 5, of course, played last weekend. Estonians 33, Ballina 19, Bruff 11, Bangor 17, Sundayswell 10, Oma Academicals 119, Clonmel 21, Skerries 43, Middleton 12, and Tullamore 20 points. A bit more clear-cut this division. Big wins. Skerries in particular, they'll be delighted with their big win at the weekend. Estonians, though, is really the story of the round. We talked about teams coming up. We've talked about Buccaneers coming up to 2A and 1A. 1B do quite well straight away. Blackrock College similarly in 2A. Now we're seeing Estonians have come straight up and have just hit the ground running. 4 bonus point wins, 4 games. Like you spoke earlier about it's as good as you can expect it. That is as good as you can expect.
Yeah, no, and rewind 6 months. Ballina were playing in 2B, and Estonians were playing in the Ulster Junior division, the Ulster top junior division. So that's a big difference. Like there was literally 2 leagues or 1 league between them. So it's massive, that Estonians have started so well. But I'm not surprised. I'm always a big advocate for junior rugby, especially at the kind of top level junior rugby. So I think Estonians will go up. I'm pretty confident in saying that. It's only week 4, but I'm fairly confident that they are going to be going up. For Ballina, they're really struggling this season. Tullamore are another team that I think will definitely be in the top 4 mix this time around. They look really good. Skerries are always going to be thereabouts in this division. I think they lost in the final last year against Enniscorthy, and they'll be thereabouts, as I said. So yeah, 2C is probably a little bit more clear cut. As you mentioned earlier, there's kind of a few teams that are leading from the front, and Estonians, it's amazing to see how a team can be at junior level 1 year and then go to the AIL when it's supposed to be like this jump up in a level, but for Estonians it doesn't really look like they've jumped up a level. It just seems like they've stepped on the accelerator and they're just going as fast as they can and steamrolling through the division almost.
But surely momentum must be a huge benefit to a team coming into a league like that. As we've seen it with Buccaneers, we've seen it with Blackrock College, now we're seeing it with Estonians. Because whether they would agree with me or not, you're looking at teams who have been exempt from relegation for 2 years because of COVID, and it's possible that teams might have just gone, oh, we're in that little bit of a stale kind of rut, and Estonians have come in with that momentum and just carried themselves to the top of the table.
Yeah, but I do think it's to do with how hard it is to actually achieve senior status. Like when you get in that round robin competition, so the Ulster champions, Connacht champions, Munster and Leinster champions, when they have to do that little competition at the end, it's so difficult. Not only do you have to win your provincial junior league, but then you have to go into this other competition afterwards against really good teams. So I think when you've been in that sort of competition, it's not really a step up because you've played against some really difficult sides and you've won. And then when it comes to going into 2C, you feel more than confident that you can deal with everyone and you can beat everyone that's put in front of you. Like Enniscorthy have done it. They're in 2B. I think they looked like they were going to go up from 2C the first year of COVID, and then the season got stopped in March. But Enniscorthy were top of the table at that time, so that they probably would have been in 2B a lot earlier if it wasn't for COVID. And they're the exact kind of same situation as Instonians. So it's not really surprising. Like, we've seen it happen before, and I think it'll happen again. Like, I think once you get over that kind of hump of junior rugby and get into senior, you can really just push on from there.
Yeah, Oma and Tullamore are probably my pick of the games this weekend. Both sides just vying for that second place at the moment, third and fifth. It's a long journey up from Tullamore as well to Oma. They won't particularly enjoy that.
Yeah, no, it is a long journey. My grandparents actually live there, so it's a very long journey. It takes 3 hours here from Wicklow. So yeah, it depends. Sometimes those type of journeys can have an effect. Like, if you're not really in the mood for it, even if you're thinking about the Ireland game and you're like, I could be doing without this, sometimes sometimes you can not really be that bothered, and other times you can be really up for it because you're thinking about the cans on the way home that you're gonna have. But yeah, it's a funny one because that's the mad thing about the AIL. You don't know where you could end up every weekend. Like, you have a set of home games, but then you have another set of games where you could literally end up anywhere on a Saturday. So that's what makes it so interesting.
Absolutely. Well, before we finish up the show, let's take a quick look at the table in Division 2C. Instonians, as we mentioned, 6 points clear after just 4 games. Super impressive from the newly promoted side. They are top of that table. Bangor, Tullamore, Skerries, Oma Academicals, very little between those sides. A couple of bonus points here or there, while Middleton, Bruff, Sunnyswell and Clonmel, with Ballina struggling at the foot of the table at the moment. Will they get their opportunity this week to maybe break that duck with the trip down to Limerick to play Bruff? Time will tell, but it's going to be a big ask for Ballina to kind of get that back from the precipice of relegation to junior football. It's very early. I'm sure we'll see them pull that right back. But Ciaran, that's all we have time for this week.
Well, before you leave, I was just going to say about the high performance contracts that were announced today for the women. I think it's really good. I know some women decided not to go for the contracts, but I think it is a step in the right direction in terms of women's sport in the country, and especially for rugby. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, no, it's a great announcement. 29 players signed as professionals for the coming season, at least. A great step for the IRFU. We'll probably have more on the show about that next week. We'll try and get some of the team on to have a chat with us about what exactly it looks like to be a professional women's rugby player in Ireland. We'll have a chat with someone from that squad next week on the show. Ciaran, thanks for joining me as always. To Eoin Marmion, captain of Greystones, the best of luck to him. Well, the second best of luck to him this weekend against my own local side here, Sligo. We'll be back with you again next week. Don't forget, you can check out all of the live updates on our website, finalwhistle.ie, the whole way through the games on a Saturday afternoon to keep track of who's winning and who's losing in your rivals, or even if you can't get to your own game. We'll be back with you again next week. Talk to you then.